Hello everyone, and welcome back to Maya's Reviews, a podcast and blog where I review all types of movies and novels. I'm Maya, and thank you for joining me for another movie review today. I know I said last week when I reviewed They/Them that I was going to be reviewing Shadow and Bone, the series, next, but I figured why not throw a little extra episode in there, because this week would have had no episodes had I just stuck to my schedule. So, of course, I'm adding an extra spoiler-free review of Prey by Dan Trachtenberg. So, let's get right into the review. Before I start, I do want to mention that there are some content warnings for this movie. I will not be discussing them in depth. Some, like, death might come up, but I'm not going to be going in depth about them like I would typically in a movie review. Content warnings include abduction, death of animals, gore, and violence. So just be aware of that before you watch this movie. It is streaming on Hulu currently, and just be aware of that going into this review. Like I said, probably will not be discussing them in depth, but just be aware of that. Prey was directed by Dan Trachtenberg and released by 20th Century Studios on August 5th, 2022 onto Hulu. It is a thriller action movie and is 100 minutes long. It's rated R and had a $65 million budget. Its average rating on Letterboxd is 3.7 out of 5 stars. The movie stars Amber Midthunder as Naru, Dakota Beaver as Tabe, who is Naru's brother, Danny DeLegro as Predator, and I apologize, by the way, if I have butchered anybody's names. I do want to say before I get really into my review that this is only the second Predator movie I've seen. I saw the original, the 1987 version, so I am not able to compare this to the rest of the series. This is essentially going to be how much did I like this movie. I'm not reviewing it as, like, did it live up to the legacy of Predator movies, because I don't know whether they're good or bad. From what my cousin told me while we were watching Prey, it sounds like they're mostly bad, but that was just their opinion. So just be aware of that this is entirely my opinion. I don't really have a bunch of background with these movies. I think I watched the first Predator for the first time a couple weeks before I watched this, so we're just out here watching movies. I just watch them whenever I want, so just disclaimer. I want to start off by discussing the main character, Naru, whose name I am probably pronouncing wrong. So she is a girl in the Comanche tribe, and by the way, this movie, I completely forgot. The description is, on the Great Plains in 1719, Naru, a fierce and highly skilled Comanche warrior, sets out to protect her people when an unknown danger threatens them. But the prey she's stalking turns out to be a highly evolved alien predator with a technically advanced arsenal. Completely forgot. I have to read the description, you guys. Wow, okay. Like I was saying, Naru is a part of this tribe, and she is obviously very upset with what has been occurring around her. She is looked down upon by her brother and her brother's friends. The men that she's surrounded by do not view her as being capable of hunting like them because she is a woman. And so this movie focuses a lot on her character development, and I think that's why I really enjoyed this movie, and I think I enjoyed it more than the original Predator. The characters are more developed, more realistic, and more relatable. I found that I was actually attached to Naru's character, and I sympathized with her a lot of the time. At the beginning of the movie, she is focused on this intense need for approval, through which she hopes to have that approval by hunting and successfully hunting animals for her people. And then quickly that turns to a need for survival. And it's a real wake-up call for her that actually hunting is pretty hard. And her brother was worried for her. But there's also that underlying sexism in this movie where she is determined to prove herself worthy of recognition just like anyone else around her. So I think her storyline, her characterization is absolutely magnificent. It really adds to the story. It's not just a bland action movie where the characters are just there. You just want to see things blow up. This movie really focuses on the characters, which I enjoyed. The movie itself was visually stunning and had a good storyline. There was never really moments where I was bored. It was always very tension-filled, and I think that's one of the good selling points of this movie is that it was so tension-filled. The score, the cinematography, and the acting in this movie really made me anxious for the next scene. I was just anticipating destruction the entire time, and I think that really made some of the action scenes very memorable. I will say that there is a lot of violence in this movie. Obviously, it's a prequel to Predator. There's massacres and there's also animal deaths. The Predator themselves is obviously still technologically advanced, but is not on the level that the Predator was in the original Predator movie, which I enjoyed because this takes place, I think, 300 years before 1987's Predator. So I think that made it more realistic because I've talked about this before, when you have a movie that introduces things that are so unrealistic to our real world, I think it's important to have some realistic aspects to that movie so that people aren't just like, well, this is ridiculous, and it's grounded in some reality, right? However, I do think the final battle with Predator and Naru was slightly underwhelming, and I think that it could have been handled better. I don't necessarily know how believable it is that Naru was able to defeat Predator with a bow and arrow. Obviously, part of the movies is that the characters are able to outsmart Predator sometimes, but I don't know. There's other scenes in this movie that conflict with her ability to defeat Predator. Obviously, in the original Predator, it was very hard for people with machine guns to defeat Predator. So I don't know how believable it is, but obviously I'm glad with the turnout, but I also think it could have been more exciting, especially, like I said, since this movie is so tension-filled. I feel like that was really a shift in the energy of this movie and really took me out of it for a little while. So I don't know how I feel about the ending, and I think the ending is mainly why I dropped this a half star, my rating. My rating, by the way, is 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this movie. I think it had a good storyline. Like I said, it was visually stunning. The characters were great. It was tension-filled. It had everything that I wanted it to have. And I hadn't really gone in with expectations. I didn't even know this movie was coming out till my cousin was like, hey, want to watch it with me? And I was like, okay. And so I went in with absolutely no expectations. I was just watching a movie, and I really, really enjoyed this movie. And I was like, you know what? It just came out. It's a part of a popular franchise. I might as well review it. Give you guys a little extra episode in there. I think a lot of the criticism for this movie comes from people who enjoyed the first movie but don't enjoy the rest of the movies, and I think that includes this one. I think there's also the issue of people feel like the movie forces you to view feminism in a movie, and I know a lot of people aren't fond of social justice being shown in movies, but personally I do not think that's an issue, and I think this movie actually handled that factor really well because it doesn't take up the whole movie. I don't believe there's a time where Naru is like, well, you're treating me this way because I'm a woman and you're a man. It's just kind of implied. I think her being able to overcome her need for approval and focus on survival is what makes her a great character in this movie and in the franchise. Obviously, like I said, can't speak for the rest of the franchise besides the first movie and the prequel, but I really enjoyed this movie. I think it accomplished a lot of great things, and as far as I know, the representation has been great for Native people. The filmmakers I know said they wanted to accurately represent the Comanche people, and while I am not a part of the Comanche people and I am not educated on their culture, their traditions, etc., from what I have heard, this is good representation. I haven't heard anything negative about it, so I'm assuming it is, which I think that's really admirable that they were willing to do the bare minimum and actually represent the people that they were including in their movie. So overall, I think this movie was a pretty good movie. I would definitely watch it again. Like I said, I think I like it better than the original Predator. I think the characterization is what really makes this movie stand out. And hopefully there's more movies like this because I really enjoyed it. So that is the end of my review of Prey, directed by Dan Trachtenberg. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please check out my blog, Maya's Reviews, at mayagreviews.wordpress.com, where I review all types of novels. You can also find me on Twitter at Maya the Bookworm. I'm also on BookBub and Book Sirens and Goodreads. My Letterboxd is below. I'm also on Tumblr at Maya Reviews. If you want me to review your book or even just reach out to me, you can email me at mayagbookreviews@gmail.com. However, if it is anything publicity related, please check out my publicity request page first and then reach out to me. Thank you so much for listening, and go watch Prey.